on.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to the launch of the Sun Civil Society Network 4.0 strategy. We're going to give it 1 second because we have a bunch of people still joining, but literally 30 seconds, and then we're going to get started. Thanks for joining on time. Perfect. Let me start again. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the launch of the Sun Civil Society Network 4.0 strategy. My name is Christine Campo, and I serve as the Global Policy Director for Food and Nutrition Systems at CARE. I also have the honor of representing civil society within the Sun Movement's Executive Committee. It is my pleasure to be facilitating this discussion today because I'm very proud of this strategy that we are launching. Before we dive in, just a few quick logistics. Interpretation is available in English, French, and Spanish. Please click on the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen and select your preferred language. Our very first speaker will be speaking in French, so you may want to take a moment to do that now. We have over 400 people registered for this webinar today. Impressive. Shows the strength of the movement. But for that reason, we've had to host today's discussion in a webinar format. So we as the speakers can see all of you, but unfortunately you cannot see each other. Therefore, we ask you to please use the Q&A box to share any responses and questions, and we'll be responding live as your questions come in. You're also most welcome to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're from, your name, your organization. That will help show the breadth and depth of the movement and those of us who are joining us here today. We have an ambitious and exciting 90 minutes ahead of us, and we will bring you along a journey across the network, the regions, the sector, the constituencies, to mark this important moment in the Sun Civil Society Network. We are not just launching a document or a strategy today, we are launching the next chapter of civil society leadership within the Scaling Up Nutrition movement. So let's dive right in. It is my pleasure to welcome Alessandra Roversi from the Swiss Agency of Development Corporation. Alessandra, from your perspective as a donor and a long-standing supporter of the Sun movement, thank you. Why does civil society leadership matter more than ever now in this current context of malnutrition and financing landscape?
Bonjour, comme il a été annoncé, j'ai la chance de pouvoir m'exprimer dans une des langues nationales suisses. Je vais parler en français.
To express myself in French, one of the official languages of Switzerland. It's an honor for Switzerland to take the floor today, and I associate my Irish friends because Ireland and Switzerland support the Sun movement and support the work of the civil society. We think that it's very important today to support the work of the civil society because nutrition remains one of the development aspects that is the least understood because it is intersectoral, interdepartmental, and it is essential for the economic, social development of countries. And we think that investing in nutrition in a very holistic manner is one of the best investment with one of the best return on investment. Now, beyond this aspect that was validated by the World Bank, because $1 which is invested in nutrition will yield up to 23 USDs. And if you want to go beyond this financial aspect and transactional aspect, it's very important to note that investing in nutrition through the work of the civil society helps to stabilize the localization aspect, which is very important for Switzerland. And bringing at the heart of this intervention, local actors distribute power and provide flexibility for activities in countries and societies and communities. So we are very happy to express our satisfaction by the work conducted by the civil society and really to insist on this local aspect, as regional aspect, with regional plans that are relevant, because at times you share linguistic communities, interest communities, and challenges communities. And the work that was done in this new strategy is essential. Yesterday, the UN Secretary General, at the opening of the 69th session of the Human Rights Council, said that the human rights are being attacked all over the world. And it is also important for us to provide means to the civil society to commit for the civil society, for human rights, and the right to adequate nutrition and the right to nutrition are part of the fundamental rights that the civil society CSN defense, and you serve as a bumper and a wall against these attack against the human rights, and we think it's therefore important to support you. So as I take the floor, if there are some donors who are online, I am calling on you to get in touch with us or with our Irish colleagues to support this Sun movement and to the Sun networks through the common functioning that helps to achieve best outcomes. And especially this, we call on you to support the civil society, especially under this new version. And on our side, we commit to support this strategy, and we hope that other donors and funders will join us, because this is an ambitious program that requires your energy, and I'm really excited to see the results. And I also hope that we receive a very solid funding, which is sustainable, that will help you to really undertake and implement the program that you will have the opportunity to discover today, and which I have discovered a few weeks ago. And I would like to congratulate all the people who contributed to this new version of the strategy. And for those who can support us and support you financially or through other means and networks, I kindly call on you to commit to this civil society, which performs very good work, and I look forward to listening to other speakers, and thank you for your work. Thank you, Sandra, for your speech and for highly recalling our rights and our interventions as part of the nutrition agenda.
I'm pleased to welcome Joanne Raisin,
Alors, c'est un honneur.
Sun Movement Secretariat. I'm just looking at the chat for a second. I want to make sure everybody knows that English isn't available, interpretation is available in English, French, and Spanish. So yes, all three languages. The interpretation button is at the bottom of your screen. Now, over to you, Joe, to help frame us in the broader Sun movement. What does Sun 4.0 require from networks, and how do you see the civil society contributing to coherence, accountability, and impact in this next phase?
Okay, thanks, Christine. I'll try to do it justice in 3 minutes, so I'll be quick. So I think my job today is really to set the civil society strategy within the broader context of the Sun 4.0 strategy, which is a strategy that's designed to future-proof nutrition in a world that's racked by climate shocks, economic instability, conflict, and most importantly, declining overseas development assistance. Sun 4.0 has 3 basic pillars. One is around strengthening the policy environments for nutrition integration across different sectors, and including, for example, climate, food systems, social protection, and health, to maximize nutrition outcomes. It's also about building sustainable country-owned systems and building up local capacity. Localization is key to the delivery of Sun 4.0. And it is also about helping connect the Sun countries and communities with diversified financing for nutrition, as we've seen overseas development assistance fall significantly over the last 2 years. And civil society and the broader networks, but civil society in particular, has a huge role to play in delivering 4.0. And let me give you some examples. So the national level multi-stakeholder platforms remain the cornerstone of Sun in countries. And civil society participation ensures that community reality informs national policies and is a way to bring in the voices of women, youth, advanced youth leadership, and bring in the voices of marginalized groups. Sun 4.0 also sets out the ambition for what Sun wants to achieve in the fragile states, which make up half of Sun countries and 62% of all humanitarian needs globally. And it is in these contexts that civil society is the backbone of what Sun does. It operates with the trust of communities where governments are not always considered as legitimate. It provides a continuation of services where governments have been unwilling or unable to do so. It accompanies households and communities that become displaced by conflict, ensuring the provision of services. And it is an important means to maintain a dialogue and ensure civil society perspectives are not sidelined where governments, for example, are contested. As Sun 4 pushes deeper into integration of nutrition into all the areas I talked about before, civil society is going to be essential in ensuring that integration is felt by communities, powered by youth, women, and marginalized groups most affected by malnutrition. It is the connector between a policy world and actual reality on the ground. And together, I think, with this strategy and the overall strategy, we think these civil society voices are going to be the means to embed these policy shifts in community governance and advocacy. So in closing, and as we move to the operationalization of Sun 4.0, we're looking to civil society priorities to help define what Sun 4.0 will succeed at. And I very much look forward to working with you all closely in the months and the coming years to make sure that we realize the collective ambition for nutrition. Thank you.
And thanks to you, Jo. With all the moving and interconnecting pieces that make the Sun movement a movement, we thank you and the Secretariat for helping to coordinate our work. Within the audience, I see a very good combination of representatives from Civil Society Network, but also the UN, the donors, and the business. So thank you very much for joining us today, a true expression of the movement. Now we're going to move to Alexandra Newlands, head of the Sun Civil Society Network. Alex is no stranger to anybody in this room because she has definitely championed the Civil Society Network for the last 5 years. Alex, briefly, how does Sun Civil Society 4.0 align with the CSN strategy, and what has this strategy renewal process been like?
Thank you, Christine. Hello, buenos días y bonjour à tous et à toutes. Thank you sincerely for being here today and in numbers. Thank you, Alessandra, for your strong support, message, and call to action. And thank you, Jo, for setting out the broader ambition of the Sun 4.0 framework. Your remarks remind us that ending malnutrition is not only a technical task, but a political and social one that requires coordinated leadership across sectors, but also across stakeholders. Today, we turn to what that means for civil society. Many of you know the Scaling Up Nutrition Civil Society Network as a space of action, of accountability, and a relentless commitment to ending malnutrition. Today, I am so proud to welcome you to a shared moment of renewal as we officially launch our 4th strategy for the next 5-year period until 2030. This new strategy sits firmly within the wider ambition of the Sun movement. If Sun 4.0 calls for country-led action, stronger accountability, and deeper systems integration, as Jo mentioned, the Sun CSN strategy within it defines how civil society organizes itself to meet that call by being inclusive, locally rooted, and globally connected, ensuring that the voices of communities most affected by malnutrition are shaping these important decisions. This strategy is the result of close to 1 year deep and deliberate consultation process grounded in honesty. We engaged and we listened to young people, to national civil society alliances, to regional groups, to international NGOs, to our global partners and some governance structures. And those voices shaped this strategy. We started by building on the progress made under the previous 5-year strategy period. Over the past 5 years, the alliances have strengthened their governance, expanded advocacy space, meaningfully engaged young people, generated powerful, citizen-led evidence, and influenced policies and budgets at national, regional, and global levels. In many contexts, this united civil society has become an indispensable actor in nutrition through persistence, courage, and collaboration. But we also heard loudly and consistently about the challenges: shrinking civic space, chronic underfunding of local actors, inequitable partnerships, and the growing complexity of crises that are reversing hard-won gains. We heard that while expectations of civil society continue to grow, trust, power, and resources too often do not follow. So we listened, and we allowed that diversity of perspectives to shape this Secretariat strategy. The result is a strategy that is clearer in its intent and more explicit about the shifts required. It strengthens locally led action. It embeds inclusive leadership, especially of women, young people, and local organizations. It protects civic space and advances accountability. And it ensures that evidence and influence move from local realities to global platforms. But strategy alone does not deliver change. We are launching this strategy at a time when malnutrition is rising again in way too many places. Inequalities are deepening and global cooperation is under huge strain. That reality demands both solidarity and collaboration. And yes, it is also an invitation to mobilize the vital technical and financial support needed, as Alessandra rightly mentioned at the start, to realize these ambitious but also feasible localization efforts that we have started building and consolidating along the years, thanks to new partners joining. I'm deeply grateful to my team, to our steering group, to our network members, our technical and financial partners, some colleagues, and everyone who has contributed to this strategy, and most importantly, to everyone who will bring it to life. The next 5 years matter. And with your continued commitment, I truly believe we can help bend the curve and consign malnutrition to history books. Thank you, and I look forward to this conversation.
Thanks, Alex, for explaining what the strategy is and isn't, and what is required from all of us actors in the Scaling Up Nutrition movement to help realize this strategy. Barbara, turning over to you, what is new in the 4.0 strategy? What is the spirit of this strategy, and how does the theory of change reflect true globalization, localization, global connection, and inclusivity?
Thank you, Christine, and hi everyone. It's really heartwarming to see so many people, so many friends, so many partners online today with us. So yeah, Alex has outlined our ambition and our inspiration. Now I will focus on the pathway. Thank you. And we'll walk you through the logic of our theory of change, which reads from the bottom up. So we'll start with our mission. Our mission is to coordinate, strengthen, and amplify local civil society leadership for equitable, accountable, and cross-sector action that transforms systems and secures improved nutrition outcomes. And to deliver on that mission as a secretariat, we perform a number of core functions. We mobilize resources, we strengthen capacities, we empower our civil society alliances to advocate at all levels, we broker partnerships, and we connect and mobilize actors across levels, from local to national to global to regional. And we document and amplify what works. So these are the tools that we use. But what makes Sun CSN 4.0 different from previous strategies is not the tools, It's really the organizing principle that's behind them, which is localization, as we mentioned already. So we had already begun moving toward greater regionalization under 3.0. We had regional groups that were strengthened. Our governance has already evolved, and our support has already moved closer to alliances. But under 4.0, we will go further than that. Localization will no longer be one priority among others. It's not a buzzword that we just put in the strategy for the sake of it. It actually underpins everything that we do. And so what does it mean concretely? It means that more resources will be directed to the alliances in the form of seed funding as much as we can. And this will hopefully reinforce the alliances as credible institutions with the goal to have the alliances as the entry point for civil society action on nutrition at the national level. And we will support them to be better organized, better governed, more visible and more legitimate, which in turn increases their capacity to mobilize their own resources and advocate more effectively. It also means that regional governance structures will be strengthened and more directly connected to global decision making. And it means that youth leadership and community inclusion are embedded structurally within the alliances, not as parallel initiatives, but as part of their core action. And my colleague Sean will speak directly on that right after me. So in short, localization in 4.0 is about shifting power, resources, and visibility, making that shift durable with well-resourced, well-governed, locally anchored alliances with both legitimacy and leverage. And on that foundation sit our 4 strategic objectives. So first, sustainably governed and resourced civil society alliances, because without stability and financing, advocacy and accountability cannot really endure and bear results. Second, youth, gender, and civic space for nutrition impact, because inclusion strengthens both legitimacy and accountability. Third, advocacy and accountability for nutrition integration, because ensuring nutrition is embedded across food systems, health, agriculture, education, climate, and social protection, and that commitments translate into policies, budgets, and most importantly, results. And fourth, amplifying effective civil society practices, so that evidence and community voices inform decisions well beyond one country, so we can learn from one another and build on each other's successes. And in these 4 objectives, if we move together, will lead to clear outcomes: more diversified and sustainable funding, more resilient nutrition services, even in fragile contexts, local evidence and youth priorities that are reflected in policy decisions, nutrition that is embedded in across systems, and increased public demand for nutritious diets, services, and rights. So that is the progression ultimately leading to our vision: a world free from malnutrition in all its forms, where strong local civil society plays a leading role in securing everyone's right to safe, healthy, and nutritious food. And that's what CSN 4.0 brings to the whole CSN movement and what makes us distinct and different. Thank you.
Thanks for giving us that snapshot on what's new, Barbara. To close out this segment, I'm going to invite Sean Coonahan, who has been spearheading our work on youth involvement. Sean, what does it mean in practice to embed youth as co-leaders, not participants, in Sun governance and advocacy?
Thank you. Well, I want to start by looking back at our strategy 3.0. This was when Sun CSN really supported young people to build a strong, legitimate mandate for leadership, but really rooted at the community level. So across 19 countries, we've supported young people and civil society alliances to deliver youth-led nutrition dialogues with the most marginalized communities in their countries. Now, through in-person training, peer learning, and small grants from the Global Secretariat, Sun CSN youth coordinators and CSAs were able to deliver over 140 dialogues with communities. Now, these dialogues, they create real spaces for excluded community members to share their lived experiences of accessing healthy diets, the barriers they face, and the solutions they want to see. And crucially, this helps strengthen accountability by connecting the voices of those most affected by malnutrition with decision makers at every level. In Bauchi State in Nigeria, young people with disabilities have been engaged by teams of young people and invited, often for the first time, to help shape the nutrition decisions that affect them. This is what becomes possible when youth leadership meets intentional inclusion. Now, the impact hasn't stopped at local level. Young people have taken this evidence into national decision-making spaces, contributing to tangible policy outcomes, as we saw most recently in Zimbabwe, where a school feeding program was implemented as a direct result of this youth-led, community-informed advocacy. And then at the global level, last year at Nutrition for Growth Summit, youth coordinators arrived in Paris with a mandate grounded in the voices of over 5,000 children and young people from the dialogues they delivered. And they closed the summit with a powerful youth-led call to action, which is still being carried forward today. So now to our strategy 4.0, let's look forward. So we're going to build on the momentum from the last few years, and Sun CSN will sustain and expand this dialogue-based approach. Over the next 5 years, we'll be reaching every country within the Sun movement, so we can see these dialogues across the whole movement. We're going to work closely with the 4SD Foundation and World Vision International to engage civil society and young people in the Nutrition Dialogues Initiative so they can register their dialogues and so that evidence can be synthesized and turned into credible policy recommendations. Now, how does this connect to Sun's broader approach to youth engagement? Well, Sun Civil Society has really helped lead the way in championing meaningful youth participation within the movement. And we now have the Sun 4.0 Youth Participation Framework, which provides a roadmap for how every network and stakeholder group can contribute to a joint approach. Over this year, with generous support from the French government, Sun CSN will launch our contribution to this movement-wide framework. With young people and civil society leading at the community level, but with strong alignment across all Sun stakeholders at every other level. So we'll be supporting this through 4 key deliverables. Firstly, we'll have an online youth engagement resource hub. This will be a central home for practical tools, guidance and examples to help countries strengthen youth participation. Secondly, we'll be distributing small grants for youth-led nutrition dialogues. This will be direct funding for CSAs to support community-based work driven by young people. Thirdly, we'll be supporting peer learning and capacity strengthening through a combination of online trainings and in-person workshops that build the skills of young leaders and civil society actors. And then fourthly, this will all be contributing towards youth-led advocacy and governance activities. We'll be creating structured opportunities for young people to influence national, regional, and global level decision-making. Now, after extensive consultation and evaluation from 3.0, we're really confident that this evolved approach strengthens local leadership for our CSAs, who will oversee the delivery in country, which will therefore support multi-stakeholder alignment at that national level. And most importantly, we're really confident that this will ensure that all CSAs and young people can reach the most marginalized communities. So now, just to wrap up, we need you to make this work. If we want policies that truly reflect people's lived realities, we must keep creating spaces where young people and community voices can be meaningfully heard and acted upon. So I invite everyone on this call today, every Sun stakeholder, CSA leader, young person, Sun government focal point, donor representatives, everyone in the broad tent of the Sun movement, engage with our Youth Leaders for Nutrition programme. Join us in championing youth-led, community-driven nutrition dialogues. Help us bring more voices to the table. Help us turn local realities into lasting policy change. And help us build a Sun movement where no one, especially the most marginalised young people, is left out of the decisions that shape their nutrition and their future. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. We heard your call to action loud and clear. And thanks to you and all the speakers in the first segment for your meaningfully involving all people in the movement. Normally movements tend to wind down after the initial launch and excitement. But now, more than a decade in, and in its 4th phase, and the movement is still growing. Again, we have more than 250 people online just for this launch that we're here today. So what I've heard from this first panel, 4.0 is not a reset, it's an evolution. It builds on the progress of 3.0, responding honestly to challenges, and steps into Sun 4.0 with a sharper vision and purpose. This strategy strengthens alignment with the broader movement, but also clarifies some essentials. Civil society isn't just a supportive role, it's strategic. It's about accountability, localization, rights, and leadership. And perhaps most importantly, we've heard from Sean about youth involvement, inclusive governance. They're not side elements. They need really to be embedded in the core of the strategy and the work that we do. Now, with this foundation set, let us turn this vision into what it really looks like at the reality in countries, in regions, and communities. So we are going to move to our next panel. You will see, by the way, because we're trying to make this session very interactive, you would see a Slido poll that just popped up on your screen. If you choose to engage, open the Slido poll and add 1 or 2 words describing what the Sun Civil Society Network 4.0 strategy means to you. We'll keep this poll open during this next session, and we will review the results later in today's workshop. So moving to our first panel, Voices from the Network. This panel reflects how the strategy resonates across different segments of our membership. Je suis ravie d'introduire Messini Bafuru Kamara, un
It's a
étudiant en
pleasure
master de
today
technologie, organisation et
to
économie de la
first
communication.
introduce to you
Et elle
Bafur
aussi est la
Kamara,
coordinatrice de la
who
jeunesse
is,
pour
uh,
le réseau de la société civile
who is the
en
coordinator
Guinée.
of the Sun
Messini, selon
Civil
toi,
Society
comment le
Network in
leadership des jeunes et
Guinea.
les dialogues communautaires ont
In your
facilité le
opinion,
plaidoyer et la
Massini,
langue
how do you the
d'engagabilité
youth
dans
leadership
le
and
cadre
community
du
dialogue
multi-réseau
strengthen
de la
advocacy
société
and
civile Sun
accountability within the
4.0?
framework
Et
of
qu'est-ce que
Sun
c'est la nouvelle
CSN
stratégie? Ça change
4.0?
quoi
And
concrètement pour la
what
participation
concrete
des jeunes?
changes does this new strategy
C'est à
bring
vous.
about in terms of your participation? Thank you. Over to you.
On vous a entendu, mais maintenant vous êtes sur mute.
I think you are on mute. Kindly turn on your microphone and start your presentation. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here, and it's an honor for me to share my presentation.
Oui, on vous entend.
So, as I was saying, it's a pleasure for me to share with you a topic that is very important for me and how we prioritize advocacy and accountability within the framework of the strategy 4.0. Talking about youth leadership, let me mention that the youth are very important in our society. For instance, young leaders in different countries launch initiatives that touch remote communities, and the goal of such initiatives was to give hope to those communities. And we brought about very important topics such as access to health and education, but we moved beyond that theory of bringing ideologies to. So, for instance, we give opportunities to communities to share their experience and their opinions, and also give recommendations on how thematics can topics can be brought into ideas could be brought to realities. For instance, a topic of famine or hunger. When we listen to communities, advocacy becomes a more concrete thing. And talking about leadership, let me state that the young people are at the front line when it comes to talking about leadership. You know, the young people were already taken into consideration in the strategy 3.0. But here in 4.0, we are giving more power to the youth, and we are giving them the opportunity to express themselves and become agents of change. So we need to understand as young people that we not only have ideas, but we are builders within our communities, within our nations. And as a young person, I am calling upon shareholders, stakeholders, and also government and civil society network to involve young people in all that we do, no matter the country we find ourselves in. I'm not saying that without the youth, nothing can be done, but without the youth, we cannot achieve our common goals. Thank you very much.
Merci, Messeni, pour tout ce que vous faites et pour mobiliser les jeunes en matière de nutrition.
Thank you, Messeni, for all that you're doing for the network, and we will keep evaluate our work with you.
Fly over to Vietnam. We have Dong Vu with us. Dong, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. We know the Vietnamese Alliance is spearheading a learning program for the network to better integrate climate, nutrition, and gender issues across our work. So how does this learning program help Civil Society Alliance to translate the ambition of nutrition integration into practical action in practice?
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to share the experience from Vietnam. And on behalf of, I'm co-chairing the Sun CSN in Vietnam, and I have the opportunity to share today the experience that Sun CSN in Vietnam could have the honor to support the peer learning program under the Sun CSN 4.0 strategy. Peer learning is not simply an activity, but it is a powerful mechanism for localization, accountability, and cross-sector integration. In Vietnam in 2024, we had the first-hand experience of how this peer learning could help the Civil Society Alliance to move beyond the silo nutrition program toward more systematic change across health, food systems, climate, and gender. So in 2024, we hosted the Global Learning Program on closing the gender nutrition gap. And that initiative embodied the spirit of the Sun CSN 4.0. We brought together nearly 200 participants from 30 countries through the global webinars and welcomed 15 representatives from 15 countries to Vietnam for an in-depth field visit. And this was not a traditional learning, it was an interactive, practice-based, and the participants engaged directly with the farmers group, the community health workers, the youth leaders, the local authorities, and learned about how the policies in Vietnam were designed with the partnership of the Sun CSN and the Sun government. And together we examine how the multi-sectoral collaboration across the maternal health services, the social protection, the food value chains, the women economic empowerment could close the gender nutrition gap. But beyond that, one of the most important outcomes was the formation of the community of practice. So this community that met quarterly and creating a safe and action-oriented space for the peer exchange. And most importantly, that community didn't stop at learning. It moved to joint advocacy. So the breastfeeding-friendly policies adopted in Vietnam, namely expanding the paid maternity leave from 4 months to 6 months, from formal sectors to informal sectors, the regulation from voluntary to mandatory workplace lactation policies inspired the colleagues in Sierra Leone to adopt the similar practices. The nutrition clubs in Nepal also inspired the similar practices in other countries in Africa. And ahead of the Nutrition for Growth to submit in 2025, we could collectively advocate to encourage the stronger government and private sector commitments on gender-responsive nutrition financing. So this demonstrated how the peer learning strengthens accountability, knowledge is translated into coordinated action. And building on this momentum in this year, we are excited that we will expand that global learning program into climate smart food system transformation to close the gender nutrition gap. So we expand beyond the gender and nutrition to include more on the climate nexus. So the interest has been overwhelming. Now, to date, we have received 300 participants express their interest in joining the community of practice. And in April, we will be hosting 20 participants from 20 countries to Vietnam. And we are more excited that together this year, the community of practice will continue from 2024 to 2026 and will be expand even more than that after 2027. So through the Sun CSN 4.0 strategy, I'm very happy to see that the peer learning has become a catalyst for systematic transformation. And I also share the vision that it will strengthen the country ownership, amplify the youth and women's voices, and foster the country-to-country collaboration and equip the civil society to hold all stakeholders accountable. So thank you very much and really look forward to having the 4.0 strategy realized in action. And I put the link to the global learning program for your information if you want to learn more about that. Thank you very much, and over to you, Christine.
Thank you very much for your presentation today, Dong. I want to make sure if anybody has any questions, please put them in the Q&A chat. We don't want them getting lost in the more comprehensive chat, and we will be answering those live. Now we're going to move to Ecuador with Juan Paulo Guzman. And my question for you, Juan, is desde la experiencia del Ecuador, ¿cómo cree usted
Taking into
que
account the
esta
experience of Ecuador,
estrategia
how do you believe
fortalecerá
this
la
strategy
voce de la
will
sociedad
strengthen
civil
the
en
voice of
transformarse
civil
múltiples
society
partes interesadas y diálogo sobre
and in the
políticas?
dialogue, the policy dialogue? Thank you very much, Christine, for this question, and good morning, everybody. It is an honor for me to participate in this space and to have the opportunity to talk to you and to tell you about the situation in Ecuador and the region and how the strength and the support from civil society is helping us. Just to quickly answer your question, this is one of the main elements I would like to highlight. It is related to the concept of the national policy. Many times, unfortunately, what we can see in Latin America and Ecuador, in the world, especially in countries with these presidential features, not as in European countries, in these parliamentary democracies. In presidential democracies, at the end of the day, what we see is that we don't have national policies, but government policies, and that means that um, they are they are related to the mandate, and regarding the country, it could be between 4 or 6 years, and that means a very important challenge because normally when there's a new government, we have a fresh start, and that means a big challenge since we cannot see continuity in policies. There is no sustainability at all. And here, civil society plays a main role because us, as representative of civil society, we don't have this expiration period, and we need to be a bridge among policies, and we cannot be jumping between them. For that reason, one of the main elements we need to highlight is related to how to create these huge coalitions. And here we can see the logic, the way the movement works. This is the for the Sun 4.0. thanks to this concept, we can connect different sectors thanks to the evidences. The way the movement has been supporting us has helped us to have this information. We have strengthened our capacities as civil society organizations, even in Latin America region. We have our strategy plan that is aligned with 3.0, and now we will start with 4.0. But as I'm saying, this information, this strengthening of our capacities and having this specific governance and the way we work in the civil society alliance and network at a local regional level has helped us to work in order to keep this continuity and to have this state policy. It is also interesting to highlight everything related to how we are working from this global approach in order to create these environments and to help the work we are carrying in the civil society. And in that sense, as I said, we have these voices, these messages coming from the international level and that are rewarding the local and regional level. And we as civil society representatives, we have these spaces, these collaboration as spaces helping us. And in that sense, it has been a very good way to work connecting to different actors, different voices in the platform, but always taking this approach into account from uh, the bottom to the top and not the other way around. And I just want to close with this message. Sometimes it is a bit cheesy or basic, but the reality is that the challenges presented by society um, push us to work together and take into account that we're stronger together. We can go beyond, we can transform society for people to access a good nutrition and to have a good starting in life to reach their dreams and to develop their countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Juan. The role of civil society in building bridges between administrations, I can't stress that anymore. And we've done such a good job within the Scaling Up Nutrition movement. And I will coin your phrase, civil society does not expire. I'm totally going to recycle that later. Thanks, Juan. Now we're going to turn to Kenya. As we heard from Barbara in her presentation, the Civil Society Network was the first to pilot regional approaches. And they've continued to be a huge success thanks to the work of people like Edgar Okoth Ayengo. So Edgar, from a regional perspective, how does Sun Civil Society 4.0 strengthen alignment between the global, regional, and country level action? And what difference will it make in practice?
Thank you so much, Christine, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're joining us from. And that's really a critical question that you've raised. And allow me to start with a very simple observation that I've had over a period of time, is that most global nutrition policies don't fail because they are poorly designed, but they fail because of poor alignment with what communities actually experience. And I believe that that is the gap that the strategy, the 4.0 strategy, is trying to close. So how is it trying to close this? And I want to talk about 3 points very quickly. So one of the ways that it tries to close this is through providing an enabling environment for us to be able to connect. And this is moving from purely representation to influence. Over the years, the civil societies, especially the community-based organizations, have been the representatives of community voices. And whenever they are seen, then they are representing communities. But that is now changing with the Sun 4.0, the Sun CSN 4.0 strategy, whereby now we are moving from just purely representation to leadership. And this is whereby we are now enabling communities through community dialogues and putting youth at the center of all this, to be able to generate their own evidence, and also this evidence to be able to inform national and regional policies that also end up in terms of ensuring that we also inform global accountability. It comes from local dialogues to national policy engagement to regional advocacy, and then back to global accountability. The second bit that it enables us to be able to listen. And this is whereby you bring decision makers closer enough to impact. And when we do this, and you find that the Sun 4.0 has really prioritized regionalization, and this is whereby we're able to bring in people, especially people from the region, the global level, closer enough to where the action really takes place, whereby regional representatives are now shaping global governance, and then regional strategies are also now informing global advocacy, and global technical support is also being adapted at country realities. And this is actually creating the two-way feedback loop that is really critical for us to be able to provide global but also locally based evidence. The third bit of it is enabling us to be able to learn, whereby you're able now to integrate and also be able to be accountable in what we are doing. So civil society, through the strategy, is now making us be very uniquely placed to be able to connect the dots, because that was really a missing link. And at the same time, civil society is now playing a critical accountability role, and that's why now we're also ensuring that we do a lot of budget tracking, monitoring commitments, and also mobilizing communities to ensure that government and partners deliver on their promise. But above all, the Sun CSN 4.0 is actually a reminder, and it reminds us of three things. Number one thing that it reminds us of is that global nutrition commitments are not just made for communities, but communities actually shape these commitments. Number two, the Sun CSN 4.0 reminds us that alignment is not achieved through coordination meetings, but it is achieved through connecting community realities to policy decisions at every level. Because when local voices shape national priorities, when regional collaboration amplifies country successes, and when global commitments are informed by lived experiences, the nutrition policies move from intention to impact. And lastly, Sun CSN 4.0 is about ensuring that the voices closest to the problems are also the same voices that are also closest to the solution, because this will ensure consistency, sustainability, and accountability. And I thank you, and back to you, Christine.
Thank you very much, Edgar. Huge lessons learned from the regional level about coordination, mobilization, and accountability. Thanks for your work. We've managed to get this right, thanks to you. The last speaker for this session is George Graham from Save the Children, similar type of organization to CARE. So I look forward to hearing what you have to say, George. What is the role for INGOs in supporting, not steering, locally led initiatives under Sun 4.0?
Super, thank you. And before I try to answer that question, let me say just how exciting it is to be in such a large and diverse community. It's amazing to see 231 participants on a call from every part of the world. So thank you for organizing this. So as you say, I work for Save the Children UK, where I'm the executive director for global impact, and I'm reflecting on the role for INGOs in this. And I think the thing to emphasize is that our primary role is to be allies and amplifiers of priorities that are defined by civil society alliances under Sun CSN 4.0. So that is, we are not agenda setters, we are allies and amplifiers of priorities that are defined by the alliances. I think international NGOs sometimes have specific added value. So those might be access to global policy and donor spaces, or the ability to convene different types of stakeholder, sometimes technical specialism that can be valuable, sometimes the ability to connect global commitments with national advocacy. And I think what the Sun CSN 4.0 is really, one of the things that's really exciting is giving us an opportunity and a platform as INGOs to speak with one voice. So aligning our advocacy across different levels, connecting global mandates with locally defined priorities. And all of this is about reinforcing the commitment to shifting power towards local civil society. So I think that the success of INGO engagement in this should be measured by stronger, more independent and better resourced civil society alliances. I should mention briefly Save the Children's role with respect to the Secretariat. So we host the Secretariat, and that simply means that we provide the operational support for the Secretariat. But the key thing is that our job is to safeguard the network's independence and its member-led governance. And just to finish, I think that the importance of all of us aligning behind local, national, civil society leadership cannot be overstated. And that's the role that INGOs have, in my view, in Sun CSN 4.0. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that intervention, George. I heard better resource civil society alliances are part of our job. So INGOs need to help fundraise, which I know we've been trying to do regularly for civil society alliances, and how it is our role to align our work behind their work. Thanks again for that, George. Let's pause for a minute. You will see another indication to open the Slido pool, thanks to Sean. I'm going to click my button and have a look at the word cloud. I'm seeing leadership, inclusive, ambitious, accountability, youth, rights, partnerships, integration, local action, and you can pull that up on your screen as well in case you want to take a screenshot. What stands out is the emphasis on leadership and connection, not participation alone, but really that shared responsibility and shared ambition by all parts of the movement. Thank you. Now that brings us to our second panel. We've now heard how the strategy resonates within the movement, but let's take a step back and look at it from another angle. How does civil society leadership strengthen the broader Sun ecosystem and nutrition more broadly? I'm pleased to invite in our second panel to share their perspectives, and I'm going to start with Dr. Jibril Bagayoko. Je suis maintenant très fière d'accueillir Dr. Djibril Bagayoko, le point focal Sun à Mali. Alors, Dr.
It's a pleasure for me to welcome Dr. Jibril Bakayoko. He's a focal point in
du point
Mali.
de vue du gouvernement, en quoi des alliances fortes et organisées de société civile
So
contribuent-elles
the
à
question
une
I would like
meilleure
to ask
coordination
you
et
is
à la
from the governance
rendez-visibilité
perspective, how do
et
strong
à
civil
des résultats
society
concrets au
alliances
niveau
contribute to better
national?
coordination, accountability, and concrete
De
results
notre
at the
côté,
national
aujourd'hui,
level?
on a une
And how do
structure
you
qu'on
see
doit
the role of
remercier
political
parce qu'ils ont été les
leadership in the
précurseurs de
success of
cette
Sun?
vision multisectorielle parce qu'ils ont
So
mobilisé efficacement toutes les
I
parties
would like
prenantes.
to
En quoi
thank
faisant de manière opératoire?
the
En informant
the group
tenir
in Mali.
toutes les parties prenantes informées des
So they inform all the stakeholders
les politiques, les programmes et sur la
about
vision du son.
the
Ils ont fait
policies
ce
and
travail.
programs of
Après, ils ont
the Sun
consulté tout le
movement.
monde, écouté leurs
After
préoccupations,
that,
surtout au niveau des terrains,
they
pour
convene
fournir des commentaires pour
everyone
que les politiques puissent s'arrêter.
and listen
Ils ont
to
impliqué
them.
progressivement
They
encore
involve
les parties prenantes pour s'assurer que leurs préoccupations
stakeholders
sont directement prises
so
en
that
compte dans les
their
documents de politique et dans les
concerns
décisions
are taken
stratégiques.
into
Je peux vous dire
considerations
ici dans la Constitution,
in decision
l'alimentation est un
making.
droit constitutionnel reconnu.
And
Et ça, c'est grâce à la société civile.
nutrition
Et ils ont
is a
beaucoup travaillé sur
constitutional
la collaboration
fundamental
en travaillant avec
right
les parties prenantes
in
pour
our
fournir une
country.
définition des
They also
problèmes,
work
à la fois des
closely
solutions.
with
Et
stakeholders
ils
in
ont
providing solutions to
l'essentiel
nutrition problems.
et que c'est ça notre but,
And the most
c'est
important thing is that
d'autonomiser
they did all they
les
could
collectivités pour
to
qu'elles-mêmes
empower
puissent prendre des
local
décisions sur des
communities
bases
so
factuelles
that
en posant
they
des
are
données comme
able
mon
to
prédécesseur
make
vient de le
decisions
dire.
on
Mais
their
pour
own.
nous, le plus important que la société
But
civile
we
doit
think that the
accompagner,
most important thing is that the civil society network
nous devons réfléchir différemment, mais convaincre
should
les
think
autres d'agir.
differently
C'est ça le son point 3,
and be able
son
to
point 4.
convince people.
Mais
That's the goal
le
of the
gouvernement, surtout la partie politique,
strategy
ont besoin de
4.0.
leaders visionnaires qui puissent
Government
transférer
and the civil
cette
society
mission sous forme
network need
claire,
strong leaders
visionnaire, sur un
who are
niveau
able to
articulé,
convey
acceptable,
these
il n'y a pas de
strategies
dichotomie
to
au niveau du
communities
terrain.
so
Cela veut
that
dire que les
there will
visions,
be no
la vision
confusion.
aujourd'hui du Mali, c'est la vision 2063.
the vision of Mali at the time is 2063. So we must be able to clearly state the strategy 4.0 so that there will be no confusion between the strategy and
Merci beaucoup,
the
Dr.
Mali
Jibril.
vision of the
C'était
government of
un
Mali.
point et vous avez
Thank you
bien
very much,
respecté
Dr.
le
Jibril
temps qu'on avait, l'horaire
Bakayoko.
qu'on avait.
You stuck to the time
Now
we
we're going to
gave
move to
you.
Greg
Thank you very
Garrett
much for
at
that.
ATNI, Access Nutrition Index, to talk about, as he knows better than all of us, transforming food systems requires the private sector practices to align as well. So what role do you think civil society has to play in strengthening accountability of private sector and delivering nutrition outcomes?
Thank you, Christine, and thank you to the Sun Civil Society Network. And yeah, really happy to try to respond on this. I'd like to raise 2 points in response to why independent civil society is critical to strengthening accountability of the private sector. The first, is really around the fact that civil society is independent from industry, at least if they're not receiving direct funding from the industry. That's going to ensure conflicts of interest are better addressed and that public health and nutrition outcomes are prioritized. That has to be done in addition to keeping the business interests in mind. In other words, business interests should not be dismissed. They're going to be important for sustainability, of course, but nutrition outcomes must take the front seat. And I believe independent civil society can help ensure that. The second is related to civil society helping ensure that private sector commitments are meaningful and monitored, locally rooted, and very much globally relevant. And I want to give two very concrete examples, things that we've seen at ATNI, at Access to Nutrition Initiative. We had several companies a couple of years ago say, hey, we're doubling our healthy sales by 2030. And it sounds really good. But when you look a little bit more closely and you find out that they actually have plans to quadruple their unhealthy sales over that same period, you realize it's not such a good target. Targets have to be, in that case, proportional. If a company's saying they're going to be selling more and more healthier products, it needs to be in proportion to their overall sales, and they need to be a net positive company, not net negative. A second example that we often see is around responsible marketing. A lot of companies will say that they're banning marketing to children, which sounds really great, but let's look under the hood. Let's find out what they're really doing. What is the age threshold? Often you'll hear 12 years of age and below, or 14 years, not 18 years or below, which is the definition of a child and in line with the WHO guidelines on responsible marketing. And what's more, often companies are using digital marketing, for example, as a loophole to market to children. They might not use more traditional media, but they'll use digital means. So we really need to push food companies, and I say we, meaning international organizations like ATNI, but all of you, the national civil society organizations, we need to push and support, I would say, food companies from the large ones all the way down to the small ones. We would argue that SMEs are not inherently perfect either. They also have often unhealthy food portfolios, but we need to show that all companies have ways that they can move forward and they need to be encouraged and supported to do much better and monitored on a regular basis against meaningful commitments. Now, I failed to mention in the beginning that I think this topic is as critical as ever. We're hearing now with all the pullback from ODA funding, a lot of governments and civil society are wondering, well, what about private finance? What about leveraging the private sector? Obviously, that's important to do, but again, it needs to be done in such a way that public health outcomes are always taken as the first priority. And we're working over the next few years to really localize our tools, work with countries to see if we can take our 13 years of learnings and tools and experience and provide these as a public good to country stakeholders so you all can improve your own national accountability and actions. I hope we can support you in that and working, of course, closely with the Scaling Up Nutrition movement and in particular the Civil Society Network. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg. I heard you loud and clear. Good. And it looks like other people, there was a question about whether everybody could hear you, but yes, we heard you loud and clear. And thank you for reminding us to push all companies, both large and small, to improve their food portfolios. Our last speaker for this session, last but not least, is Juan Echenove, FAO's Right to Food team lead. One, in your view, what role can local civil society play in realizing the right to food and advancing nutrition equity under Sun 4.0?
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Christine. And of course, huge congratulations to the Sun Civil Society Network for this strategic launch that so many people is joining today. So, I mean, this strategy is anchored in a very concrete vision, right? Which was described by Barbara before. And that vision is the realization of the right to adequate food. So let me begin with a simple reminder, which is that the right to adequate food is, of course, a human right. And it's a human right recognized in international law. So it's not charity, it's not food aid, it is not a voluntary aspiration, it's a legal obligation for the states. And it means that every person, everyone, without discrimination, must have a regular, stable, and dignified access to food which is adequate or the means to obtain it. So adequate here is a key word, and it's not abstract. It means food that is not only accessible and available and affordable, but food that is safe, food that is nutritious, food that is healthy. In other words, food that supports health rather than undermines it. Food that can be accessed with, without families having to choose between rent and vegetables or between medicine and protein, right? A child growth, a woman anemia, the inability of low-income families to afford healthy diets, or the rise in obesity alongside micronutrition deficiencies. These are no technical anomalies. They reflect policy choices. They reflect policy dynamics. And it has been rightly mentioned today, human rights are under enormous pressure. Around the world, we see shrinking civic space. We see weakened accountability, growing polarization, and human rights, including the right to adequate food, risk being diluted and reframed as optional policy goals. And this is precisely, Christine, back to your question, why civil society is central. Because, as already said by other speakers today, rights only live in a way when they are defended. And today, agri-food systems are shaped also by powerful economic actors that can really influence food systems and the way food is produced and how it is processed and so on. And as Greg just mentioned, without transparency, without regulation, without accountability, public interest can be overshadowed. So civil society acts as a counterbalance. It ensures that nutrition remains a matter of justice. It raises questions about affordability, marketing, practices on ultra-processed food environments. So participation is not symbolic. I would say it's foundational to food systems. And without meaningful civic engagement, as already also mentioned by my predecessors today, nutrition policy risks becoming technocratic or completely disconnected from lived realities. So with participation, food system transformation can be grounded, can be legitimate, can be equitable. So from the perspective of FAO, advancing the right to food means embedding participation, accountability, non-discrimination, transparency into agri-food governance. And it also means ensuring that engagement, for instance, with corporate actors, is guided by clear public interest safeguards and by the objective of nutrition equity. And this is why the Sun Civil Society Network plays such a unique role, because you are not simply another stakeholder. You are not, you are much more than that. You are the organized voice of communities within the global nutrition architecture. You connect local realities to global platforms. You safeguard accountability in multi-stakeholder spaces. So you ensure that the life experience of malnutrition is not absent from decision making. And at a time when human rights are under this unprecedented strain, this role of civil society is not a side issue. It's a condition for protecting and advancing the right to food. So again, big congrats to the Sun Civil Society Network for reaffirming that commitment, and of course for demonstrating that nutrition equity, rights, and civic space must, I would say, advance together. Thank you so much, Christine.
Thank you so much, Juan, for reminding us of the very essential, important aspect of human rights. the difficult choice that families have to make when feeding their own families, and how that is a concrete expression of policy decisions, and why a lot of us, such as myself and others on this call, work in advocacy and policy making because of the massive impact that they have. Dear speakers, we are getting to the close of we just closed our last panel and are getting close to the end of today's session. What we've heard clearly from you today is that civil society is not peripheral to achieving better nutrition results. It is central to accountability, to rights, to political ownership, and to real systemic change. Since all of our speakers have been very good with time, which does not happen often, I'm going to open up the Q&A and look at the last two questions that are remaining in case anybody within the speaker panel wants to answer some of the questions. So one, Duong, if you're still with us, congratulations on the success of the community of practice. If possible, could you please expand more on the upcoming learning opportunity in April, or point us in the direction of a resource? And then I'm going to come to you, Jabril. I know it's late in Vietnam time, so we may have lost Duong. Oh, I don't see her on the screen anymore. Okay, I will. Dr. Jabril, allez-y, venez, vous avez
Merci. Je pense qu'il y a un élément qu'on doit essayer
There
de
is
mettre en avant
an element that needs to be highlighted, especially with regard to the civil society in countries that are facing multiple challenges like Mali. Because the civil society today is doing a lot of sacrifice in order to sensitize people on how to produce in multi-crisis context and how to ensure that the right is protected, and how to make sure that impact is generated for children and women. These are issues that the civil society really need to tackle, because climate crisis will continue to weaken us with what we see in the Sahel regions. It's really important that we insert this aspect, because sub-Saharan African countries are really affected by this aspect. Thank you, Dr. Jibril. This is correct.
Speakers that would like to comment on anything that they've heard so far? I know it was very, very rich from the other speakers. Before we move to our last speaker who will be closing today. I think we are good, and I think we've been able to answer all the questions. So we have one more poll for you, which Sean is launching right now. So the Sun Civil Society Network Strategy 4.0, in which of our strategic objectives are you more interested in supporting? So if you scroll down, it lists the strategic objectives. We have strategic objective 1, which is sustainably governed and resourced civil society alliances. Strategic objective 2, youth, gender, and civic space for nutrition impact. Strategic objective 3, which is advocacy and accountability for nutrition integration. And strategic objective 4, which is amplifying effective civil society practices for nutrition. If you click one, we will know a little bit of who has joined us today, and know where we can push our strengths and where we should be focusing otherwise. So feel free to take a moment to answer that poll. And Sean and the Civil Society Network Secretariat have been pulling all this information together and managing a million things behind the scenes. So thank you very much. Just to let you know, we're waiting for our last and final speaker to join us. He had just got he had to step away for 1 second. And it is Martin Kajong, which is the Secretary General of the Inter-Parliamentary Union and a member of the Sun Leadership Lead Group. Martin, have you joined us?
I'm afraid Martin will join in about 5 minutes max.
Okay. I admit I've never found myself in a position where everybody stuck to time. Then again, I've also never found myself in a position where almost 300 people joined a webinar. So it shows that webinars still have their impact to bring people together. Sean, from your experience working with youth, do webinars work?
A good question. It depends on the kind of young people you're trying to work with. I think we take for granted sometimes equitable access to internet. So a real challenge for us is trying to reach those more marginalized young people who might not always have regular kind of sustained access to the internet. So we've had some really interesting conversations with the youth coordinators about how do we find other ways of connecting with young people beyond webinars. How do we create in-person spaces or adapt online resources to offline? So yeah, it's a real challenge we grapple with as well.
Connectivity within the scaling up nutrition has always been something that is vitally important, hence why interpretation and translation is always a part of our actions. I've recently learned for low bandwidth how vital using WhatsApp and other applications are instead of emails and Teams and Zooms. Any other lessons learned for connectivity, either from Barbara or Alex, who have had to manage the whole Sun network connectivity of civil society? Ooh, Edgar's got one. Come on in, Edgar. What are your secrets?
Yes, yeah, thank you so much, Christine. And for us, our experience in Kenya is a little bit different because when we look at the telephone penetration is really above 80%. And a majority of the youth also are having smartphones. And whenever they're having smartphones, then we find that they're able to access internet. It might not be stable in some parts, but they're able to access internet, but also in terms of how to pay for the internet, then I have a timed version where you pay for a short time, but and also it's also fairly affordable. So for us, we find that most instances online works. It enables us to be able to mobilize more youth. And currently, even in our engagement with the Youth Leaders for Nutrition, we use both approaches. So we have where we're able to engage with them virtually through online engagements, but also it's also sometimes good to go and see them. Whenever they see you, then they see the connection that you have with them. So in terms of reaching more people, more youth, then we find that virtual really works. They're also techno-savvy. So we don't want to assume that they have basic phones. So we find that this new versions of connecting through virtual means really work with them. So we employ both so that we don't leave any of the youth behind. So I find in Kenya, it's employing both really engages. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Edgar. I've also had we're open to any questions about the strategy itself. If you're wondering how to align to the strategy, please don't hesitate to come off or write your question in the chat. Alex, over to you.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you honestly to everyone who has spoken so passionately. I can really feel the support behind this strategy from within the network and outside as well, from the nutrition community at large. I wasn't due to offer closing remarks, but as we're waiting for Martin, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of questions that were raised in the chat, and I understand that a lot of them are related to funding, to technical and financial support. And we hear that loud and clear from all our members. And this strategy is really about supporting members according to the needs, but also with the understanding that the funding is limited in development, in nutrition, in supporting local actors. But we are committed as a Sun CSN Secretariat, together with our partners and all the supporters here on the call, to continue championing this localization agenda, to continue talking to donors, potential donors, technical partners, to steer them in that direction, that to truly end malnutrition, we need to listen to communities, and we need to shift the power to local communities and local actors who are working more closely with those affected by malnutrition. And the examples I gave in the Q&A box, by the way, I don't know if everyone can see it. You have to click on more, or the three dots at the bottom of your screen, and you have the Q&A box there. And I thought there was an interesting question around what are we doing to try to change the mentalities of the donor community towards that localization agenda. And I wanted to give a big shout out to the donors we have who have supported the Sun CSN Secretariat in the last year, really, last couple of years. Well, of course, Irish Aid and the Swiss Development Corporation, who have been supporting the Sun CSN Secretariat for years now, but also new donors like FCDO and the French Ministry of European and Foreign Affairs, who have entrusted us to use this money very wisely, because we have this capacity to sub-grants to local actors, to young people, to civil society alliances, to themselves carry out their action plans, support meaningful youth engagement, lead innovative projects, strengthen their governance structures. And we know that this will never be enough, but we are committed to doing that. More than 60 or close to 70% of our budget goes to regional and national efforts, and we want to do more, we want to do better. And that's why our call to donors and to financial and technical partners to trust us with that mission. We know that this money goes to the right people, to those who can truly support and end malnutrition from the community level.
Great. Thank you for that, Alexandra. I'm going to look at the results quickly before wrapping us up for today. So thank you for answering that last strategy question. So out of strategic objective 1, which is sustainably governed and resource CSAs, 9% of you felt that you can contribute to that. That's great. For strategic objective 2, which is youth, gender, civic space for nutrition impact, we had 30% of respondents clicking there. Strategic objective 3 was the largest, advocacy, accountability for nutrition integration. That's where we feel is our strong suit, at least on this call. And strategic objective 4 got 9%, amplifying effective civil society practice for nutrition. And that is good, because there are a lot of people on this call that will be doing that anyway. So we do have our last speaker with us, but he's in the waiting room. If somebody can see if we can get him in. There we go. I see you, my friend, Dr. Martin Chagong. It is now my great pleasure to invite you, Secretary General of the Interparliamentarian Union and member of the Sun Lead Group, to offer our closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. Let me apologize. I've been a victim of technology here. I went onto Teams, whereas I was supposed to go onto Zoom. In any case, all is well that ends well, and so I'm very pleased to be with you all today and to address you and say a few closing remarks at this very important meeting of yours. And I believe that this meeting comes at a very important and timely moment for us. And as member of the Sunday movement, as you just said, Christine, and Secretary General of the IPU, the Global Organization of Parliaments, I have been a long-standing, strong advocate for ensuring that SUN's strategy and actions are firmly grounded in local realities. It is indeed at the local level that the greatest impact can and must be made, particularly for those most affected by malnutrition in all its forms. At the IPU, our work pays particular attention to people in vulnerable and marginalized situations. From a parliamentary perspective, effective mechanisms for public engagement and consultation are essential. They enable parliamentarians to gather data, insights, and contextual knowledge that are critical for identifying inequalities and understanding how laws and policies play out in real life. In this regard, civil society organizations are indispensable partners. They provide vital data and community-sourced evidence that bring visibility to the daily realities of people who are too often left unheard. Beyond numbers and indicators, civil society organizations help convey lived experiences that frequently remain hidden behind statistics. They humanize policy debates and help parliamentarians better understand the real-world consequences of legislative and budgetary choices. This collaboration is fundamental to fostering a culture of evidence-based policymaking, one in which data is not only collected but actively used by parliamentarians to inform decisions and continuously improve outcomes for populations facing vulnerability and exclusion. For these partnerships to be truly effective, however, parliamentarians themselves must be empowered. They need sustained support and targeted training to build partnerships, interpret evidence, and engage with communities in respectful, inclusive, and meaningful ways. Equally important, they must operate within strong parliamentary institutions that place people at the center of decision-making and provide the necessary frameworks for the full and effective use of parliamentary powers, including legislation, oversight, and budgeting. One of the key challenges parliamentarians face today is ensuring that nutrition remains a political priority, an increasingly complex and interconnected crisis. Climate change, conflicts, economic shocks, and rising food prices are reshaping food systems and deepening inequalities. Addressing malnutrition, therefore, requires a comprehensive and integrated approach that recognizes these linkages. The IPU's work has shown the value of providing platforms for parliamentarians and other stakeholders to share experiences, lessons learned, and effective strategies for advancing nutrition across sectors. In this context, the SUN Civil Society Network plays a particularly important role. Its engagement, expertise, and proximity to communities are essential to the successful implementation of the SUN strategy. I very much hope that the exchanges we have seen today will continue and deepen throughout the implementation phase, strengthening collaboration and collective action. Together, we can ensure that commitments translate into concrete, people-centered results. I thank you.
And our thanks back to you, Martin, for being able to join us today despite your busy schedule. Trust me, you are always worth the wait. Dear participants, today marks a renewed commitment to a network that is locally led, globally connected, and exclusive by design. And we're ready to turn this ambition into action. Thank you for your attention, for joining us today in such great numbers, and continue to watch this space in supporting the network. If you have any questions, don't ever hesitate to contact the Secretariat. And I thank you all for your commitment to nutrition. Take care and keep up the good work.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. Bye.